Michael Wolff's best-selling book, Fire and Fury, got a lot of attention for purportedly exposing the inner workings of the Trump White House. Problem is, since the book came out, Wolff has faced a lot of criticism for inaccuracies in the book and sourcing in general. Now there's a book that promises to expose a lot of those issues. It is called Fraud and Fiction, and the author is with us tonight, and he may be recognizable to many of you, Eddie Scarry from the Washington Examiner, but you're here in your capacity as the author of the book. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, so let's talk about this. The book came out, Fire and Fury, the beginning of the year. There were so many stories about it. It was threatening to blow the lid off the place.
Right.
But slowly but surely, there were these little things exposed. Michael Wolff finally came out and said, well, look, I'm barely a journalist here. So what got you in on the act here?
Well, we needed somebody to finally come out and correct the record in a really big, definitive way, and that's what we do with Fraud and Fiction. By the way, it's on Amazon.com. That's where they get it. So we go through one by one with Michael Wolff's book. We go through the biggest, most sensational claims in his book, including of which that the president is mentally incapacitated, down to the serial inaccuracies, of which there are many. But the book is not just about that. We also got... We also talk about how the media turned Michael Wolff's book into a crisis for the White House, crisis for the nation. We heavily scrutinized the media because the thing about Michael Wolff's book was a lot of what he wrote in it was not new. A lot of it was things that the media had been saying for a very long time, and then his book came along and repeated those same things. So we talk about that.
It was like manna from heaven for Morning Joe. I mean, for how many days were they talking about this on MSNBC? And then finally, somehow, Michael Wolff lost Mika Brzezinski. And I feel like when you write a book like this to expose the Trump White House and you lose Morning Joe, man, you've lost the war.
That's right, and I have a signed copy for Joe and Mika if they want to get it, because there's a whole chapter in the book dedicated to Morning Joe, because it really encapsulates what happened with this book, with Michael Wolff's book. You know, they went for about a month of building up the credibility. They kept saying over and over again, quote, the book rings true, even if there are inaccuracies, it rings true. We looked at that one. I find out that almost everything that the media talks about when it came to this book was not true. The one thing that was really true was the Steve Bannon interview in it. That was about all we had. But everything else was largely not true. But so Morning Joe, they build the credibility up for a month. When we get to about 2 months in, the Nikki Haley affair with the president rumor kind of came out from Michael Wolff's book. That's when they decided to dump Michael Wolff. But the thing was, they had already done so much damage. That we talk about in Fraud and Fiction.
So when you mentioned the Steve Bannon interview being you know, that did happen, that was legit. And he said some things and he pulled back a little bit and he was sort of waffling on that. But the fact that you had somebody like him so close to the Trump White House, doesn't he add a little bit of authenticity to the narrative?
Right, two things. One, the president did call me right after the news broke of my book. Yeah, the president did call me. He did say, that's the one thing he said, was that Michael Wolff had no access to the president, but the president told me, he said, we didn't know that Steve Bannon was talking to Michael Wolff this whole time. So he admits that, he concedes that point. But the other thing is, that's something I was not able to get to the bottom of, is why Steve Bannon, not just with Michael Wolff's book, but he did it in other interviews with other publications where he completely contradicted things that the White House was saying, even while he was working at the White House. That I don't know, and that's a weird thing about Steve Bannon, but he's somewhat of a weird guy.
Yeah, I think some of the stories we heard about that, I think that could be quite true. So as we move ahead, I mean, you're putting this out there again. It was on sale, and Amazon.com, as he mentioned, or many of them. By the way, how would the president feel about it being on sale at Amazon.com right now?
That's the one thing I'm waiting for the president to hold off on his Jeff Bezos Amazon.com criticism, just until my book ships, and then he can go back to it.
Is it shipping? When is it shipping?
It's out. People can order it now, and it's shipping now.
All right. Well, good. Well, Eddie, I know this is it came out. It all happened very quickly for you.
Very quick. But it's very good. It's very good. It's a good book.
Well, and I'm sure. I mean, it's a big undertaking, but I'm glad you're doing it, and we always like to have you on here. So it's fun to have you in a different capacity tonight as a published author.
Absolutely.
Eddie Scarry, good to see you.
Thank you.